Glad for those that are here this morning. Glad to see Dean Hill back with us this morning as well. We want to pray for our pastor and Edie, and pastor has had his procedure during Tuesday, of course, as most of you know, and there were some little complications with that, and that's why he won't be here this morning. And just pray for him that all will be taken care of. They did find a tumor, and so they've been sent off. I don't know if it's what it's going to be, but just be praying about that, okay, for them. Continue to pray for Jimmy and Emily, and for Alex and Rebecca. And is she still pregnant?
No, but I'm not going to say anything, but the baby is here. I want you to make the announcement. I don't feel it's my place to.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, but have all of these in your prayers. Some weird things happen at this church, but they're good things anyway.
Brother Jack, Carol Cruz, we've had her on prayer list. I doubt if she'll make it today.
Yeah.
But her children are with her right now, which is a good thing, because there's been some that, anyway, it's a good thing that they're all right there right now. And just pray for the children.
Okay.
It's just about to pass.
That's a request for Carol Crooms, who's very near death, and her children are with her, but be in prayer for she and her family.
Right.
Asking.
Her husband, the kid's dad, died 2 years ago tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's
Tomorrow, I'll be.
so.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
She's waiting till then. But I don't know. I said you need to let her know you're all okay with her leaving now. You know.
All right.
That's
Be in prayer for our country and for all that's going on with it, which is totally upside down and backwards. Pray for all the people who've been involved in the fires, and I think they said that there's 1,300 people missing in those, and pray for the schools, students. The kids went back to school this week, and school getting started all over again. Pray for that. Pray for today's services. Pray for our missionaries and the missionary we just took on, this missionary, Brother Kim and his family, to Irvine, California. They're going to be starting a church there in Irvine. The area where they're going is a very high population of Korean, and he is Korean, and they have high hopes of being able to have great success. We're going to pray that they have great success. Their story is there in the Missions Minute in the bulletin. Pray for our van ministry. Pray for our van. I think we're discussing, we've been discussing in the business meetings of getting a new van, and something we're about that. So pray about that as well. You can do that. Okay, and pray for, again, we'll say the Crooms family, Carol Crooms family, and for Pastor again. I want to mention for him again. Let's see.
Janice Tillman, too, she started her chemo last Sunday, so remember her in prayer.
Who?
Janice Tillman.
Oh, Janice Tillman. Okay, yes. She started the chemo therapy. Janice Tillman.
Praise God, there is a treatment for it.
Amen.
That's what we're most thankful for.
Yeah.
She can get it for you.
Okay. It was so good to see Linda Howard here this morning. So her shingles have settled down and allowed her to be back in church this morning. We're thankful for that. All right.
What about Ed Hackett? Has anybody heard from him?
He's doing fair. I saw him somewhere, but I don't remember where now. Was he here Wednesday night? Yeah, he was here Wednesday night. That's where I saw him, talked to him, yeah. So, all right, do we have any others?
Miss Deborah Kitchen.
I just talked to Sabrina. Deborah Ketchum had her surgery Wednesday, knee replacement.
Yeah, she had her foot operated on.
Deborah Ketchum had knee replacement,
Knee?
total knee replacement.
Oh, okay. I thought it was her foot. Oh, my goodness. All right, I don't know how she's doing.
She's at home. I just talked to Sabrina, and she came home on Thursday, I think. They get you right home.
Yeah,
But anyway, and the rest, she's walking, but she's, her leg's swollen and it's bothering her.
Yeah.
a lot. So
okay.
For Glenn and Deborah.
All right. Yeah, pray for Glenn and Deborah. And Deborah had a knee replacement, so remember her. How is your brother, Van? Van, how's your brother doing?
He's doing real good. He hasn't had to take like all through. He did to a 6 week without having to take.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was getting twice a week.
Yeah?
He's doing something for it, I believe it's Friday.
Well, good. All right. Continue to pray for Van's brother. Remember him. All right. Do we have any others? If not, let's go to the Lord in prayer and ask for all of these. I know there's a lot of them on here. I don't know about Ann Smith. She was going to go live with her daughter that I think was in trying to figure out whether she was going to have to or
I
not.
believe she's still in rehab. I don't think-
Yeah. Okay. Bill Rayburn changed doctors and got a new doctor, and they took him off, took 3 medicines away from him, and he was feeling great this morning out there. He said he's doing much, much better. So we're glad to hear that. He said his heart had settled down and was back in rhythm and everything. So he was being overdosed, I guess. So Jim Williams, you want to ask the Lord's blessings on our prayer list today?
Gracious Father, we thank you today. Thank you, dear God. Everybody come out today, dear God, who is your word. Just be for all the teachers, dear God. The message today, just be for all the prayer list we have, dear God, unspoken prayers. And the ones unspoken also. And dear Father, just be for our country, take care of it, lead us, God, do it. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Don't think there were any birthdays or anniversaries that we had. I know there's not any anniversaries. The Lord's Supper is tonight. Be sure and prepare for it. The men's fellowship is next Monday night on the 28th. And says be sure and invite a friend if you can. The ladies Oh, this is for the lady that's in the prison ministry, has her basket box out there if you want to give something toward that.
This week it's toothpaste and deodorant.
Yes, toothpaste and deodorant. No toothbrushes, please, it says, okay? And I think that's all the announcements that we have for now. So let's go to our lesson. We'll be in Exodus chapter 1. And though it doesn't give us the amount of time that's passed, it gives the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt, and every man in his household came with Jacob, and says in verse 1, and it goes down through the lineage of those that came with Jacob, of those of Israel, and that were in Egypt. And in verse 8 it says, now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Well, from the time of Joseph up to this time that we're talking about, is almost 400 years. Is why he didn't know Joseph. A lot of time had passed, which it doesn't give you or tell you about this in a fashion here. And so Israel had the nation of Israel, the people, the Jews had grown considerably. God was blessing them in fertility, and the population of them in the land of Goshen had increased dramatically. And in verse 9, the new Pharaoh said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of services in the field. All their service wherein they made them to serve was with rigor. So we see that they were afraid of them because of the multitude of them, but yet they were not a type of people that were going to raise up or form an army and rise up against them. We know that beyond any shadow of a doubt, but yet they had God working for them, only they felt like God had abandoned them. It had been many years now. And in verse 15 it says, and the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, whenever you do the office of the midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then ye shall she shall live. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he, that is God, made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. So he got pretty serious about this, and charged all the people that if they saw a male baby, that the people themselves could take the baby and throw it into the Nile River. And because he himself was so afraid of the Jews because of the number, and the building the cities that they were building over there. We find that during the Exodus, whenever the Exodus finally came, that those buildings are left right there. The evidences that they were building and the Exodus took place, that it all just stopped suddenly, are there because they're there. Many of the buildings are just about so high with the brick and mortar, building just the way they were saying. The Bible tells that they were building those, and they are there just partially built. And so we know that the areas where the Jews were building this, where this was taking place, and they were certainly, it grew even more intense whenever they made them start going, and they had to go long distances to get the straw and to make the brick with later on. But in verse 8 in Exodus chapter 2, then we find that and there went a man of the house of Levi and took a wife, a daughter of Levi, and the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, This is one of the Hebrew children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the mother and the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water. And so we see the story of baby Moses is always told, that it was found by Pharaoh's daughter, of course. She put it in a strategic place, knowing where she was putting it. And Moses was the name that Pharaoh's daughter gave to Moses, and it means to draw out, we see that little did she know that very name, Moses, would then one day mean that God was going to draw the children of Israel out of Egypt by this very child that she named it, and all the commotion that would create and cause whenever it took place later on. But now Moses was in the royal house growing up there. And verse 11, it says, "And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand." Now then, but during this time, Josephus, the Jewish historian, clues us into some of this time that this is almost 40 years that covers, again, a big jump of time in there, that Moses is 40 years old whenever this takes place. But during that time, Josephus tells us that Moses was appointed general over Pharaoh's army, and that on several occasions, a couple of occasions, that when they had war, that Moses was a very military-minded general, and he never lost a war with other surrounding countries or people that they had war with, that he did very, very well in the book of Josephus. And so we know that Moses was not just, lounging around enjoying himself as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, but he had important duties to take care of, and apparently did them very well according to that history that is not written here in the Bible. But we see that Moses concerned for his people as he goes out and he sees the Egyptians mistreating his people. He decides to take this matter into his own hands, thinking that no one was seeing what was going on. And he kills the Egyptian. And so then in verse 13 it says, "And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. So now he realizes that his little deed of the day before has been made known, and that it's not a secret that he had killed the Egyptian. But in verse 15 it says, Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So this was, his life is divided up. Moses' life is divided up into three sections of 40 years each. And this is the first 40 years, the end of the first 40 years that it comes to. And now it's the beginning of the second 40 years that will take place. And he flees into the land of Midian. And this is over in Saudi Arabia is where Midian was. So he actually goes across the Red Sea or thereabouts somehow or another, and it doesn't tell you any of the circumstances, the details here, but that's what he crossed over into Saudi Arabia and into the land of Midian, and now we begin a new phase of his life. And he sits down by a well. And now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flocks. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, how is it that ye are come to so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flocks. And he said unto his daughters, and where is he? And why is it that ye have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. So we see that now we don't have details about Moses. Just was a shepherd then for the 40 years, and it passes very quickly according to this. And in chapter 3 it says, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. And he said, draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, and a place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hittites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? So he was quick to reply on this. When God, he turned aside to see the bush and spoke with God, and he was afraid. He turned his face away and was afraid at first of all, but he was not afraid to object to what God was saying right away. And it always tickles me that sometimes that we in our own lives, when God speaks to our heart, how many times have we say we love God, and we do love God. We're thankful for the salvation He's given to us, but when sometimes that God speaks to our hearts, and we're quick to object as well. Well, the very same thing that Moses did. Well, we have all kinds of excuses. In verse 12, he goes on to say, he said, certainly I will be with thee, God speaking to him, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee when thou hast brought forth the children out of Egypt. Ye shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say unto them, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt unto a land of Canaan, and the Canaanites, the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews hath met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. So this is the instructions that God is giving to Moses as to what he's supposed to be saying, what he's supposed to be doing. And so in verse 19, he goes on, I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that, he will let you go. And this is still God speaking. And I will give this people favor in the sight of Egyptians, and it shall come to pass that when ye go, ye shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow from her neighbor, and of her that sojourneth in her house jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And ye shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Egyptians. So God intended whenever they left Egypt that they were going to be repaid for all of the years of suffering that they had been through. times of slavery that people like to talk about in the world today, most of the time when they get to talking about slavery, it's very seldom that anybody ever brings up the Jews being slaves, but they were actually slaves in Egypt for 200 years of that time, of the longest actual period of time that any nationality has ever been considered under slavery. And yet this is one of the areas that whenever slavery is brought up, that is never mentioned about the Jews, but they were, and it's true, it's on the record, and it is a true thing about them. And so what God was going to do for that, whenever they left, he was going to have them borrow from their neighbors. This is what we experienced in Belize. Of course, the word here in the British language, which this Bible is written in British, the word borrow is not our borrow. It's not the American borrow. It means to take and not give back. It's not to use for a little while and give you again. The word borrow in British means to take and not give again. And so when we first went to Belize, people would come and they wanted to borrow this and borrow that. And for about the first few times we borrowed it, we'd go to get it back. And because they wouldn't bring it back, so I'd go and say, look, I need my, whatever it was they borrowed. I said, I need it back. And, they'd get so offended. They'd get upset. And, well, we borrowed that from you, that's what I mean. You borrowed it. I want it back, No, we borrowed that. We couldn't figure that. There was a real conflict there. And because when they borrowed it, they didn't intend to give it back. That was what it meant. And we learned that we loaned it to them. If you want it, we will loan it to you and you bring it back. So, and that's what that we learned in the Bible. These words have a special meaning, that what God was saying, that for the British writing in this, that when they borrowed it, they were going to take it and they were leaving the country with it. It was not going to be given back to them, So they actually spoiled the country. They took a great, great treasure from out of the land of Egypt. And I really don't think they ever realized, the Jews never realized what God did for them in that, because by the time all of the plagues were, finished, that the Egyptians were more than willing to give them whatever they wanted to get them out of the land. And in doing that, they went out so extremely wealthy, but yet once they got out, 3 days, they were 3 days out, and what did they start doing? Complaining. Complaining. Who's going to take care of us? And yet they were so wealthy, it was a sad situation that they never really truly realized what God did for them or was doing for them all the way through this whole situation. And but anyway, we see then in chapter 4, then it says, now then Moses, God's been speaking and giving instructions, telling him what was going to happen and doing. Now Moses gets his chance. And so Moses answers and said, but wait a minute, God, wait just a minute. He says, behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. And the Lord said unto him, what is that in thine hand? And he said, a rod. And he said, God said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from before it. And the Lord said unto Moses, put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. that they may believe that the Lord God of thy fathers, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob hath appeared unto thee. And the Lord said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. That is, he put it inside his jacket, his clothing that he had on. And then when he pulled it out again, it was leprous and snow, sore, full of sores, and so bad it was white as snow. And that's what leprosy does whenever it's really, really bad. Verse 7, and he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as the other flesh. It was healed up. And it came to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to thy voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto thy voice, that thou shalt take of the water of the river and pour it upon the dry land, and the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well, and also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what he shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and ye shall be, even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. And thou shalt take this rod in thine hand, wherewith thou shalt do signs. And Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. And the Lord said unto Moses in Midian, Go, return into Egypt, and all the men are dead that which sought thy life. And Moses took his wife and his sons and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. So we see, we'll stop there, that this was the end of the second 40 years and the beginning of the third 40 years that Moses would be dealing with the children of Israel, and these great events that take place again in the history of Israel, of the nation of Israel, and the growth of the people. And they had grown mightily. At this time, it's estimated they were in the population-wise over between 2 million and 3 million. It's really difficult to know. Nothing gives you any actual report or whatever how many there were, but there were quite a few of them at this time. And so Moses is going to be dealing with that many people all the way through this stories as we go through them. And that's a lot of people to deal with. You can talk to pastor and dealing with this small group or a group of people like we have here, and this church is a handful. And so you can imagine his frustration so many times in dealing with that many people. But we hope you get some out of these stories. These are great events that God's working his hand, working with people. How does God do that? You ever stop and think about how does God, he deals with, millions of people at a time, and all the heartaches and all the thoughts, all the demands of prayers that go up to him continually. So many times that's what they are. They're not so much prayers as all the demands that the people put on God. And so we ought to think about that he is a great and wonderful God. And we love him, and we just thank him for all that he does do for us. Amen. Heavenly Father, as we come to you this morning, we thank you for Moses, and we thank you for